Great. Hello and welcome to How to Find Healthy Love. I have asked those of you who are here live to pop a note in the chat, your location and your biggest dating challenge. And welcome to those who are watching on recording as well. I'm just going to give it 1 minute while perhaps some other people join. I know some people are watching on the recording, and then I'll begin. Okay, so thank you to those who've commented. Welcome, everyone. There may be a few more people joining us. And thank you for sharing those challenges. I'll just read out a few. Meeting suitable men, choosing the wrong relationships, then having difficulty letting go, dating challenges, being a widow with a child, so keep, if anyone else hasn't popped in your dating challenge there, please do that. And also be thinking of any questions that you might have. I would like to start with an exercise. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for now. So I'm going to start with a little exercise, which invites you to be present, but also is about relaxing and creating a sense of safety in ourselves. I'm going to be talking a little bit about safety today and how our sense of perhaps not being safe, maybe in our early life, impacts our relationships. So I'd like you to join me in a sigh. So I'd like you to breathe in and then sigh out. And you can make a noise. You're all unmuted. But I'd like you to do that with me a few times. And I'd like you to notice if there's any change in how you feel, in your body, in your sense of relaxation. So I'm going to breathe in. And then I'm going to sigh out. And I'd love you to do that with me. And I'll do that again. So that is one way of sending a signal to our nervous system, to our brain, to our body, that we are safe, that we are safe. And it's also a way of relaxing and of coming into the present moment. And that is important for me, especially at the start of a workshop, because I might feel a bit of anxiety. So I want to relax and be present. And I invite you all to do the same. I also invite you to share in the chat as we go along and to be honest and open and vulnerable, because that is how we connect to each other on a deeper level. I'm going to talk about safety a bit more in a moment, but just so you know why I'm here delivering this workshop, I'll just let somebody else in. So what qualifies me to deliver this workshop? If you've just joined, we're saying where we're dialing in from in the chat. and our biggest dating challenge. So I am here because I have a lot of knowledge to share about dysfunctional relationships and healthy relationships. And I share that knowledge from my own experience. I now work as a transformational coach. I am a trauma-informed coach, which means that I understand the impact of early life challenges and difficulties on our present day relationships. And I understand that through studying counseling and psychotherapy and through my own therapy and my own experiences. And my own experiences of dating and relating, which I'll talk about in a moment. And I combine my coaching with speaking on mental health and well-being, on addictions and eating disorders. I have written a book called How to Fall in Love. I have finished my novel today, finished the last page today, which is a relationship drama involving a woman who struggles to commit and struggles to love herself. And I host courses and retreats. And I am married and have been for 5 years, I think. And I have been with my partner for 10 years. And that's a bit of a miracle that I have managed to maintain a healthy and loving, fun, joyful relationship for 10 years, despite efforts along the way to self-sabotage and to sabotage the relationship. And I'll talk about that a bit more. So I just wanted to mention my relationship difficulties and where they stem from. So for those of you who've just joined, we did a short exercise at the beginning around breathing in and then sighing out. So extending the out breath, making a sighing sound, which helps us to feel safe. And my relationship difficulties stem from my childhood, from not feeling safe. Now, some of you might relate to this. Some of you might have explored your early life. Some of you might be just starting out on that journey. So I hope to bring you with me in this conversation. If you don't understand, please put a question in the chat or you can reach out to me afterwards. But when we don't feel safe when we're young and we depend on these adults around us to keep us safe and keep us alive, then we adopt certain behaviors. We adapt. I adapted myself. I became a good girl, a people pleaser. I didn't rock the boat. I became who you wanted me to be. We suppress our true selves. So perhaps the loud, noisy, rebellious part of ourselves, we suppress that and we become good. We try to be perfect. Maybe you go the other way and you become a complete rebel. We people please. We struggle to set boundaries. We put others' needs over our own. And at the same time, we crave love and affection because we haven't had enough of it as a child. And this sets us up with what we call the fantasy of perfect care, so that somebody out there will save us or fix us or be our everything. And we crave this and we chase it and we look for it everywhere. But because we fear love and intimacy, because we have been hurt in the past, then we push it away or we attract people who can't meet our needs, who can't give us what we want. And we get in that push-pull cycle. We run away from the available people. We attract the unavailable people. So for me, these behaviors stem from not feeling safe. And if you can relate to those, or somebody has, please pop in the chat that you relate to these behaviors. So these are behaviors we form as often as young people, as young children, and then they infuse all our adult relationships. And this is where we get into trouble. And this is where we find unhealthy love. So this workshop is about how to find healthy love. But I know from my experience that I found a lot of unhealthy love. Um, Starting with my relationship with myself, unhealthy relationship with myself from a very young age, binge eating, binge drinking, starving, compulsively exercising, compulsively overworking, avoiding my feelings, numbing my feelings, having relationships with men who were not good for me, who might have been alcoholics or workaholics or drug addicts or lived a million miles away, couldn't commit. So, I have had the whole gamut of dysfunctional relationships, dating unavailable men, dating men who were already in relationships with other people. I had a lovely boyfriend for a number of years who was gay, so who came out as gay after we split up. So that is the epitome of emotional unavailability. So I wonder if you're here, so I can imagine you can relate to having unhealthy relationships or having patterns that don't serve you in your relationships. At the same time, I kept trying to have a relationship because deep down, I longed for love and intimacy and connection. In fact, I craved it. I craved it because in my childhood, that need didn't get met, that need for unconditional love, unconditional positive regard. That need wasn't met. So I craved it and I chased it and I looked for it everywhere and I got involved with a lot of people, but I also feared it. So we chase it, but we fear it. So we sabotage it or we choose certain people who can't meet our needs. And I did all this for years. So from my late teens through my 20s, through my 30s, and started to realize late 30s that I was the common denominator in all my relationships. So, I could blame the people out there. And I'm not saying that the people we date are in any way perfect or that they don't have their part to play, but we can't change them. We can't change the people out there. We can't change the market. We can't change any boyfriend or partner or girlfriend or person that we're with, but we can change ourselves. And I think one of the biggest wake-up calls for me was to realize that I was the common denominator. Stop sharing my screen for a moment. That I was the common denominator in all my failed relationships. And it was a bit of a shock because it's much easier to say, I don't meet available men, or there isn't anyone suitable, or there isn't anyone eligible, or there isn't anyone out there, or all the good people are taken. That's much easier to say. And if this truth is hurtful, if it hurts, then I'm sorry about that. But I'm here to help you to transform. So when I realized that I was the common denominator in all the relationships that hadn't worked, I could do something about it. And that is the wonderful thing. And just to see what's in the chat, people share they've had unhealthy relationships, including a long emotionally abusive marriage, and also avoid relationships. So there are several ways of avoiding relationships, and they might look different. So one is obviously not dating, not being in relationships, not trying. So that is one way of avoiding them. Another way of avoiding true relationship is to keep dating people who aren't available. So I did a bit of both. I did some avoidance by not dating, by staying very, very busy with a job. I used to work as a political journalist. I worked in Parliament. I traveled all over the world. It was very busy. I didn't have time to date. So I did some avoiding. But I also did the other kind of avoiding that doesn't look like avoiding. So that looks like boyfriend, partner, but they're not available. They're not emotionally available. They're not there for me. They're not emotionally able to be intimate with themselves or with me. So avoiding, just be aware that avoiding can take on different guises. Um, so yeah, late 30s, early 40s, I decided to sort myself out, and through studying counseling and psychotherapy and having therapy and growing and developing and healing and understanding my past and how my past influences my present and getting loads of support, investing in myself, I changed. I stopped dating unavailable people. I started dating healthy people, and I met my partner. And there's a whole story behind that, the on and the off and the push and the pull, and it's all in my book, How to Fall in Love, which I recommend reading if you haven't read. But I understood eventually what was going on, and I committed, and we got married when I was 48. And I have been doing this work since 2017, supporting other women primarily and some men around dating and healthy relationships. And I've done lots of workshops like this. And I always cover something different because I am always growing and learning. And I hope if you've been before, if you're familiar with my work, I hope you learn something new. And if you're new to me, I hope that this really serves you to transform and take your next steps. So we're going to look at, I'm just going to put up my slide. We're going to look at 4 relationships. Your relationship with yourself, and I know that you know that that's important. And I know that that can feel like, oh, really? Do we have to talk about that again? But I am going to talk about that again because it's vital. It's the foundation. So we'll talk about your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your life, your relationship with others, so non-romantic relationships, and your relationship with your romantic partners, with a romantic partner. And all these, this is these are the pieces of the jigsaw of healthy love, and we need them all in place, I think. So your relationship with yourself, yeah, let's just I'll stop this for a moment. Let's just take a moment, and if you're watching on catch up, or if you want to watch this again, I encourage you to take a bit of time. But how is your relationship with yourself? How connected are you to your feelings? How much are you caring for yourself, taking care of yourself? How much do you love yourself? And how do you show yourself that you love yourself? Do you value yourself? Do you honor yourself? So you might want to answer that in the chat, perhaps however you want to, scale of 1 to 10, how much you are loving yourself or caring for yourself, or how connected you are to yourself. And when I say connected and feeling our feelings, like I can easily illustrate the opposite of that from my own experience. Binge eating, overeating, drinking to excess, working to excess, scrolling to excess on my phone, not taking care of myself physically, emotionally, spiritually. So that is the opposite of a healthy relationship with myself. And I know you know this, but this is the absolute bedrock. So self-care, self-compassion, self-understanding, self-love, self-worth, self-esteem. And if you haven't taken my 14 Days of Love course. I'll link to that at the end. The first 4 days are free. You might want to do that. That takes you through all these different stages of self-love. Remind me if I forget to link to that at the end. So someone says, currently experience a women's health issue, so not feeling really good about myself, lost confidence. Yeah. So are there any steps you can take to support yourself further? I imagine you're already doing things to support yourself, but how can you support yourself? I show up for myself, but I need to do more mindfulness. Disconnected from feelings, too busy, not great self-esteem. Although this has got better in the last few years. So it gets better when we focus on it, when we commit to it. Yeah, quantity of chocolate eaten, especially over Christmas. I can definitely relate to that. But yeah, I want you to hold this as the absolute ultimate foundation. And there's a piece of this relationship with self, which is self-awareness. And I'm going to come on to that when I talk about our relationships with others and our romantic relationships, because truly knowing our makeup, our psyche, our patterns, our relationship template, that is getting to know, that is an act of self-love and self-worth. And, you know, I'll talk more about that in a moment. So that is our relationship with ourselves. I'm just running through these, and, you know, I could spend a whole hour on each of them. So some of you might have been on my Relight Your Fire, Find Your Passion and Purpose workshop. And if you haven't, you can still access it. So let me know if you'd like it. But, you know, that is about setting our own world on fire. So when we often, you know, the cliche of, I want to find someone who sets my world on fire, we need to set our own world on fire first. Now, we don't have to be on fire all the time, but we want to have glimmers of passion and purpose in our lives. So if you are living a life that feels dull or inauthentic, or you're abandoning or forgetting your dreams, then that isn't a solid foundation for finding healthy love. We don't need to change everything, but we do need to take some steps to lighting that fire. And, you know, I was sharing on social media on my email list earlier today that I wrote the final page of my novel today. That's 111,000 words. It needs a good edit, but it's taken me 4 years, almost, yeah, 4 years. And, you know, still got some tweaking to do, but I was absolutely delighted, jumping for joy, feeling full of passion and purpose for my life. Also because I was hosting this and because of the other workshops that I'm hosting, you know, and it can be overwhelming and things aren't always perfect, but I have real passion for my life. And it wasn't always like that. And, you know, I used to work in Parliament in this amazing job, which people would have died for because it was so exciting. And I was excited by it for a while. But then in midlife, approaching midlife, I was bored. It was dull. It was inauthentic. I wasn't being authentic, and I needed something more aligned with my authentic self. And I needed to do that. I needed to do that before I could find love. And I didn't know that at the time. I was looking for someone, a man in my workplace. I was looking for a journalist. I was looking for someone who was in the same field as me. I was dating those people and it wasn't working out. And it was only when I found the courage to leave, to pursue my writing, my creative writing, to do this work, to set my world on fire, that I not only did I get more time and energy in my life because I'd left that full on all consuming job, but also I was more authentic, more passionate. My cheeks were glowing, my eyes were shining. I was totally engaged in my life. And I think this is one of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that we also need to put into place. So you might want to put in the chat where you are on this scale of being fired up about your life. Because if we're not fired up, we are going to look for someone to light, to set our world on fire. We're going to look for someone to do that. And we're going to make it their job rather than taking responsibility for it ourselves. And I did this. I did this in my late 30s when I was bored in my career. I found a guy who lived in a different country, and I wanted to move to his country, move into his house, and I wanted him to make it all better. I wanted him to light my fire, to give me a better life. Fortunately, he declined my offer of moving in with him. That relationship ended, and I realized that I had to take responsibility for my life and do it myself. So, where are you in terms of lighting your fire? Thanks for the congratulations. Being here tonight with you is helping me to ignite for the next steps for dating. Brilliant. Yeah, because we want this pie chart of our lives. So we've got this pie chart of our lives, and we've got all these chunks, these like different pieces of the pie, and we want to make sure they're all reasonably full. So our career, our health and well-being, our social life, our friendships, our health, our love life. We want them all to have equal weight, and I work with many women who are in really high-flying jobs whose pieces of the pie are all out of sync because they're working so hard that they don't have time to think about health or self-care or well-being or healthy relationships, love. And that's really common. It was the place I was in, and what I understood was that I was avoiding, we spoke about avoidance. I understood that I was avoiding love through compulsive work because working was so much easier than dating. So I'll just carry on working. So just seeing what's in the chat. Cold water swimming fires me up. Yeah, me too. Work doesn't, but I'm close to paying off my mortgage and maybe retirement. So then invest in doing something that's more aligned. Yeah. So firing up your life, and that can be, you might want to think it's the start of the year. You might want to think of something that you love. Maybe you love to dance or sing or paint or draw or write. Maybe you want to tell jokes. Maybe you want to do flower arranging, whatever it is that puts this smile on your face. So right now, this is work, but it lights my fire because I can be entirely authentic. I can share my knowledge. I can help others, and it totally lights my fire. So someone else says they're focusing on having a high value life. Work gives purpose. I need to expand that into other areas of life too, rather than using work and working even harder to provide it all. Yeah. Yeah. So that can be an issue as well. If we have really purposeful work, we can give our all to it, and forget about the other aspects. So just have a think about what piece of the pie do you need to work on, expand, focus on, so that you have a more balanced fulfilling life. So we've talked about your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your life. I'll just take a little sip of water. So I want to talk about our relationships with others, not romantic, although a lot of this will also apply to romantic, but we'll go into that specifically in a moment. Your relationship with others, how you show up in your other relationships is, again, another part of the bedrock of healthy love. It's another foundation. So I've got some pictures here. I really love these pictures. I used this in a workshop I hosted on codependency. Some of you might have seen that, or if you want to link to it, let me know. So we have a chameleon, we have a pretzel, and we have a doormat. So how are you showing up in your relationships? Are you showing up as your true self or as your false self? Are you changing the color of your skin to suit the people that you are with? Are you squeezing your shape? Are you changing your shape so that it's more comfortable for others? Maybe your natural shape is square and you're showing up as a circle. Maybe you are squeezing yourself into a box that just isn't you anymore. And maybe you are subordinating your needs and your wants, not caring for yourself in relationships, but caring for others. Maybe you are allowing people to undervalue you, mistreat you, stand on you, walk on you. Maybe you're compromising to excess, sacrificing yourself to excess, subordinating yourself. And if we are doing this in our non-romantic relationships, it doesn't bode well for our romantic relationships, because as I'll talk about in a moment, the romantic relationships, they just set all our hormones on fire, and they push all these buttons from our childhoods, and everything we've learned in all our personal development tends to go out the window. So we want this in place in our relationships, and we want to be practicing having a voice, holding our shape, holding our true shape, holding our color, whatever that is, being true to ourselves, standing tall, standing up for ourselves, having conflict, if that means, finding the peace. A lot of us don't like conflict, don't like disagreement. We'll do anything to keep the peace or not rock the boat. So do you need to be shaking things up, showing up more authentically as you? So I have been all these in the past, much more aware of it now. I'm working to be my authentic self rather than people pleasing, and have been a conflict avoider. Thank you for sharing. It's really helpful when people share. Oops, sorry. Because we feel less alone, we feel inspired, we understand that it's possible to change. So just have a think, on our journey to healthy love, is there anything right now, this month, that you need to change to show up more authentically, to hold your shape, to be less of a pretzel, to have a voice, to be true to yourself? Perhaps to rock the boat. I rocked a boat last year in a very uncharacteristic way, because normally I would be more people pleasing. I rocked a boat and it terrified me. It really terrified me, and I didn't think I could do it, but I did it. And that boat is still kind of rocked. Well, it's still rocked. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I am surviving. I'm more than surviving. I am managing a situation with a very rocked boat, and I'm okay. And I think in my past, in my childhood, when I grew up around alcoholism and anger, and when I spoke my truth and it was met with anger, I felt like I couldn't survive that. I wasn't going to survive that. Um, so obviously, as a grown up, I have the memory of rocking a boat and feeling like I wouldn't survive, like I wouldn't get through that, and that is very triggering, and it means that we avoid conflict. But I have done sufficient healing in order to rock a boat and be okay with it. And that has been the most healing experience that I've had in a very long time. So, yeah, think about how you can stop being a chameleon or speak up for yourself, decide what you want to do. Um, so, this is all vital because when we get into a romantic relationship, especially if we have a lot of wounds from our childhoods, from our early lives, or from past relationships, things kind of go out the window. We like that red mist descends, the hormones kick in, and we think, well, or we don't think, we just start getting ourselves deeper into relationships. We can't let go of them. We become people pleasers. We lose our shape. We lose our color. Or we run off in the opposite direction. So, yeah, think about how you need to get this foundation in place. So the work I do, the courses I run, the first course is laying your foundations, because your foundations are absolutely vital, and without them, we cannot date healthily. Thank you for sharing. Very uncomfortable if I feel I've rocked a boat and upset another, but I'm working on it. Yeah. And the more we do it, the more liberating it is. We're like, oh, wow, gosh, I rocked a boat. I've upset people. I'm still here. I'm still alive. Brilliant. Um, so, yeah, this is something we can all work on. So, I want to look at romantic relationships, which is going this way. So, and oops, this is relevant, obviously, to whether you're dating men, dating women, dating people. No matter our preference or our gender, we tend, or no matter our background or our story, what is incredible is we tend to have the same patterns and the same fears. And that is why the work I do, it works with men, it works with women of different backgrounds and different experiences, because when we boil down to the nub of it, we have similar fears and patterns. We have in our childhoods, we have this need and this desire for perfect care, for unconditional love. Often we didn't get that. So we have a deficit of unconditional love, and we crave it. We crave perfect care. We crave our needs getting met in the way that they weren't met. And that leads us into these patterns. And the patterns, they might be avoidant patterns, or they might be addict patterns. They might be compulsively dating. They might be compulsively avoiding. They might be somewhere in between. But we end up in these patterns, and they tend to come from the same roots. And this is why I love doing this work, because we can understand ourselves, and we can dismantle our patterns and rebuild and have different experiences. So let me just check. So I'm just going to put up another slide. So when it comes to romantic relationships, it's important to realize that sometimes our subconscious is running the show. So I have an iceberg here, and you can see a lot of what's going on the surface of that iceberg. What we can't see is what's under the surface of this iceberg. And in human terms, this is our subconscious. And there's a problem if our subconscious is running the show, or if we're not able to be aware of what's going on in our subconscious. So when we don't know what's going on in our subconscious, we often rationalize our dating experiences. And, I have said these things, and there may be some truth to them, but often this is our subconscious. So we might say, I don't have time to date, or there aren't any good people out there, or there aren't any eligible people out there, or all the good people are taken. We might say that that particular person, we might find reasons not to like them. Oh, I don't like their job, or I don't like the way they speak, or their accent, or I don't think they're right for us because X, Y, and Z. And that might be true, but what we want to be aware of is whether our subconscious is leading us to find reasons not to date or not to choose this person because we are afraid, because we've been hurt before, because on the surface, I'm saying I want a relationship. Underneath, the bottom part of the iceberg is saying I'm terrified. I'm scared of being hurt. I'm scared of making a choice. I'm scared of making the wrong choice. I'm scared of being trapped. I'm scared of commitment. If your early life experiences set you up to believe that relationships lead to hurt, to pain, to loss, to breakup, if they set you up to believe that you're not good enough or not worthy, or that you're afraid of being seen for all of who you are, if that's all in your subconscious, your dating experiences, they're not going to go well. And you might rationalize them as, oh, I didn't like that person, or he's not right for me because he does this job, or there aren't any people, or I haven't got time. So we might rationalize. And, if you've read my book or know my story, I rationalized my way out of my relationship with my now husband about 3 times, ended it for various reasons, which all seemed perfectly rational and reasonable at the time. And I now know were dictated by my subconscious. So just let me know if you can relate to any of this. If you think there are things going on in your subconscious that are sabotaging your dating and relationship efforts. Some of you will know this already. But let me know if you can relate to what I'm talking about. Because what we want to sort of break through the rationalization and understand that there might be some fears there, that we might be afraid. So I'll just give it a moment to see if anybody shares. And what we want to do is bring the subconscious to a conscious level. And that's what I do in my work with people. I help people to bring the subconscious into the conscious, so that we can make conscious choices rather than mindless, knee-jerk, compulsive choices. So we have in the chat, afraid of losing my independence, afraid of not being good enough, afraid of rejection, afraid of making the wrong choice. I now recognize that making the wrong choice is to avoid. Yeah. I can relate to all of those, you know, so terrified of making the wrong choice, of feeling trapped. You know, my template for relationship was my mother's relationship, which was marrying a man she didn't actually want to marry. The relationship going wrong very early on, infidelity, ending up with 2 kids, not much money, divorce, no career. So I didn't realize this at the time, but my subconscious was saying, why on earth would you want to do that relationship thing? That sounds like a really bad idea. You'll be trapped. You'll lose your career. You'll lose your independence. You'll lose your money. And then on a deeper level, you know, often as children, if things aren't going well at home, we blame ourselves. So we don't feel good enough. So at my core, I have a sense that I'm not good enough, that I'm not lovable, that I'm going to be rejected and abandoned. And I either avoid that at all costs by not dating, or I make sure I date people who don't value me, who aren't right for me, who don't value themselves, who aren't, yeah, who can't see me, who aren't available. So I undervalue myself in relationships because I don't feel valuable. So if this is familiar, you want to work on the self-esteem, you want to work on self-love, on self-worth, you want to understand your core wounds and heal those wounds. And we're not going to be able to do that all together in this workshop, but this is the journey you want to go on. So I'm going to talk about, just stop this for a moment. Yeah, thank you all for your participation in the chat as well. It's really great to hear you sharing, and it does help people to feel less alone and more connected. I'm going to talk about trauma, and I'm going to use the word trauma, which some people might not relate to. But I want you to think of it as developmental trauma, as in developmental child, developmental trauma, can be as simple as not getting our needs met as children. It can be as simple as feeling unseen and unheard. And when I say simple, you know, that's really painful for a child. So I use the word trauma very broadly. Sometimes we think we have to have had some absolutely diabolical experiences, and some people have, and that leaves trauma. But it can be more subtle than that. And I'm just going to use, I want to use the word because I want to talk about trauma responses, because they are relevant in our romantic relationships. So trauma responses can be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, you'll have heard of those things before, but how does this show up in your romantic relationships? So here we have, I couldn't get them to sit in the right order, but down here we have fight. So we fight, and we fight ourselves. So what do I mean by that? So anything that you do that is self-harming, binge eating, binge drinking, sleeping around, dating unavailable people, overworking, self-criticism, self-judgment, giving yourself a hard time, beating yourself up, that is a fight response. And it probably has roots in your early life experiences. So is fight one of your coping mechanisms? Now, the other way that fight shows up in our romantic relationships, this is really interesting. Some of you will relate to this. It's when we find fault with the other person. So we meet someone, they seem perfectly nice, but we start to criticize them and judge them and find fault with them. Now, I was an expert at this, and I still can be. And I have to be very careful in my relationship to watch. I have to watch this all the time. I'm a fight type as well as a flight type. I'm a fight type, and I have to watch, because what happens when I criticize and judge my partner is I put distance between us. And that's what happens when you're dating. And obviously, we need to be aware of red flags, of unavailable people. And I could talk a lot about that. But we want to be aware of our fight type if we are criticizing and judging, and if that is creating distance. So it can be a really difficult balance to strike, being aware and conscious of potential red flags, of people not being right for us, of people potentially harming us. And we want to be aware of our tendency to judge and criticize and push away people who might be good for us, because that keeps the intimacy at arm's length. So that's the fight. Then the flight. I'm a classic flight type. Busy, busy in the mind, busy in the body. And how does this show up in dating? Well, it shows up in I'm too busy to date. It shows up in the endless chatter in the head about, is he right for me? Is he wrong for me? Is he right for me? Is he wrong for me? Is she the right person for me? Is she not? That constant chatter is part of the flight. And what it does is it keeps me away from the present. It stops me from being present to my feelings, to the other person, to my fears, to the dating process. So that's what all of these trauma responses do. The fight, flight, freeze, fawn, they keep us away from the present, away from our feelings, and therefore safe, in inverted commas, because we don't have to feel and we don't have to face our fears. So the others here, freeze, we have the snowman. So freeze is when, you know what happens when you're in a conversation or in an argument, and then you can't think what to say and you totally freeze up. And then half an hour later, you think, oh gosh, I know what I should have said. You've been hit by the freeze. Your brain has shrunk to the size of a pea. You can't think what to say. You've lost your voice. So you might find in relationships that you lose your voice, that you freeze, or you might find that you can't take action, that you move forwards, that you're paralyzed, So I had a bit of both, you know, when I was dating my now husband, I had the flight. He's not right for me. He's not right for me. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. He's right for me. He's not right for me. I also had the freeze. I can't move forwards. I can't move forwards. So I'll just stay stuck in this ambivalence, in this not knowing. And then you've got the fawn. So the people pleasing, the doormat, the putting others' needs above ourselves, undervaluing ourselves. So I wonder if you can identify your primary type, or if you can identify how this shows up how these types show up in your dating experiences, your romantic relationships. You might want to share that in the chat. And what is the answer? What is the answer to showing up like this? Because we want to show up differently. The opposite to these types is to engage, It is to be present, and it is to engage. So we engage with our feelings. We engage with our fears, as in we get to know them, we work through them. We engage with the other person. We're present. We have conversations. We are emotionally available ourselves. We stop the fighting. We stop the criticizing. We stop the judging. We find our voice. And, this doesn't happen overnight. Like, these types, they've been with us a long time. They take time to heal from. But, when we bring all this to the surface, when we get the awareness, we can notice, okay, I'm in my flight. I'm in my fight. I'm in my freeze. I'm in my fawn. What's the opposite? It is to engage. It is to be present. So think about those in your romantic relationships. I can see from the chat that some of you can relate to some of them, all of them. Yeah, elements of all four. I have elements of all four as well. I'd say my primary is flight. And they change, they change as we change and evolve, they change. So you want to think about how you can, move forwards in engagement. And that might be engaging with dating. It might be engaging with your feelings. It might be engaging with your life. So moving on to emotional availability. So this is what we've been talking about. And I do have another course, How to Find an Emotionally Available Partner. I can send you a link to that in a follow-up email. But this is what I've been talking about really from the start. So when I realized that I was the common denominator in all my relationships, that although I kept falling for commitment phobes and people who avoided commitment, or I kept avoiding relationships, I had to look at myself and see that I was emotionally unavailable. I wasn't available to my own emotions, and I wasn't available to the emotions of another. I wasn't available for intimacy. And then this changes. So we become available to our own emotions. That is one of the foundations of healthy love. And we become available to other people. We're able to hear, and I'm sure you all do this brilliantly with friends. But what happens in romantic relationships is they push our buttons. They frighten us. They trigger our fears from our past. So we become emotionally available to the other as well. We don't judge. We don't criticize. We engage in conversation. We become emotionally available, to our intuition. So that means when we're dating or looking for love, we can assess whether this person that we're speaking to is good for us, whether they're emotionally available themselves. Are they exhibiting a flight or a fight or a freeze or a fawn? Are they dating someone else, or are they attached to their work, or are they afraid of commitment? What signs are they exhibiting? So as we become emotionally available to ourselves, we are closer to our intuition. We are more able to discern what's right for us and what isn't. I'm just going to check the time. Okay. So knowing your fears and facing your fears. You can't see that at the top. It says, know your fears, face your fears. For me, and for many of my clients, this is the catalyst. This is the transformational work. So we've spoken about some fears. I've spoken about them. You've shared about them. We want to get really familiar with them. What am I afraid of? And how do those fears show up in my romantic relationships? So if I'm afraid of losing my independence, I'm going to avoid relationships, or I'm going to date someone with whom it could never really work out, because then I won't have to face my fear of losing my independence. If I'm afraid of being hurt or being seen, fully seen, then I'll hang out with someone who can't offer me true intimacy. In fact, that will feel really attractive and really compelling. This person is very attractive to us because they can't offer us true intimacy and true connection. And the other thing we want to be aware of is how we might be drawn to people who remind us of key figures from our past. So, for example, my dad, bless him, my late father, wasn't emotionally available, but I really wanted him to be. So I will then find a man in my present, in my adult life, who isn't emotionally available, and I will try my best to turn him into someone who is. I will try to change him because that's incredibly compelling and attractive, and it means I can rewrite my past, rewrite my story, get the emotionally unavailable man to love me. And this might be why you stay in relationships or why you subconsciously seek out people who aren't going to be able to offer you true intimacy. They might remind you of an emotionally available figure from your past. You might try to change them. You can't change them, but you keep trying. You keep trying because there's the fantasy there. There's a fantasy that we can change our past. The healing comes from accepting that that ship has sailed, that our past has passed, and we need to move forwards with all this knowledge, being aware of our fears, being aware of our past patterns, meeting our own needs, giving to ourselves what wasn't given to us as much as possible, getting lots of support around us, healthy support. 1 second while I take a drink of water. So bringing the subconscious fears into our consciousness, having the courage to understand them, to feel the pain. If we have pain from our past, to process the pain, we can only do that if we stop numbing out on substances or behaviors, to ask for help, to get support, to bookend with others. And of course, we can do lots of work, we can do lots of self-discovery, but we will always have some blind spots. And because these wounds, these triggers, they go deep. And this is why we need help. This is why we need people around us to support us. And this is why I do the work I do, because I help people to see their blind spots, or in a group we can see each other's blind spots and we can support each other with those blind spots. So I wonder if you are familiar, if anything is coming up for you in terms of things that might be in your subconscious, fears that might be coming to the surface, or blind spots that you're aware of, or challenges, things that you find really difficult in relationships. I'd love you to share it in the chat. Do you find it difficult to discern between healthy and unhealthy? Do you find it difficult to show up authentically and speak your truth? Do you find it difficult to have a voice? Do you find it difficult to let go of people? So share in the chat if any of those questions resonate with you. To trust and let go. Yeah, so to trust and let go. to trust myself, to trust that if I let go of this, something more suitable and worthy of me will come along, to trust that but I'll be okay. You know, there's when we think about love addiction, and you know, that's quite a strong term. You don't have to relate to that. But love addiction is when it's intolerable to be in a relationship and it's intolerable to be out of a relationship. So we're in one, but it feels like it's not right, or I can't get my needs met. And then we're out of one and we want to be in one. It's not nice being out of one. And where we want to be is where we're okay being out of a relationship. We're content, we trust ourselves, we have a passionate and purposeful life, we have a full life, and that we can enter into a relationship in a mindful way, in a self-loving way, and then we can stay in it. We can stay in it if it's right for us, not if it's not right for us, but if it's right for us, we can stay in it. So just seeing what's being shared, difficult to have a voice, being a chameleon. This changes depending on who I'm with. So someone says, you know, having been the person who believed I could change someone and learned that wasn't possible, now struggle to trust my instinct on red flags. Yeah. So when we struggle to trust our instinct, we want to spend more time with our instinct. We want to get to know our instinct better. We want to spend more time in meditation, connecting to our heart, connecting to our feelings. And we want to get lots of support when it comes to making choices and decisions. Losing myself in relationships is a really common challenge. I know that one too. I've lost myself in the past. We build our self-esteem, we build our self-worth, we know ourselves, we set healthy boundaries, we get lots of support, we get people on our side to help us. I see red flags, but not quick enough to step out. Again, that's really, that's a challenge that many people have. And that gets, as we heal and we grow and we get the support, we step out of them faster. We might spend less time in the relationship. We see them faster. Having poor boundaries, finding it difficult to spot green and red flags. I think, with the flags, it's interesting because I really like the expression green and red flags. It's clear, we understand what it means, but I'm just thinking now that they're on the outside, aren't they? And of course they're on the outside. The green and red flags are on the outside. We want to keep looking inwards. We want to keep looking inside. What are my fears? What are my patterns? What have I done in the past? What have I been drawn to? Why have I been drawn to that? I do this exercise where we list all our fears and then we list all our patterns and we draw lines between them and we see how our fears lead to our patterns. And by understanding our fears, healing from those fears, processing our pain, we can then change our patterns. And this is really powerful. And women have done that. Women who've worked with me have done that. Tuning into instinct and trusting it. So I feel hopeless when it comes to love and terrified of dating, even though I have done some healing and still on the healing journey. When are we ready to be open to love and dating? Thank you so much for sharing. I hear you and you're not alone. And well done for doing the healing that you've done. And, for me, we are ready when we have our foundations in place. If you've done enough healing to have solid foundations of connection to self, connection to intuition, self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, awareness of your patterns and where they come from, awareness of your fears. If you have that awareness, and if you have done your letting go. So I've just ran you through the first 5 steps of my How to Fall in Love, Laying the Foundations program, because I believe that is when we are ready to date. And that is why the second half of the program is called Date with Courage, Clarity, and Confidence. If there is still a feeling of terror of dating, I would say perhaps do some more healing work. Dig deeper into your foundations. You're welcome to reach out to me, book a discovery call. And also, we don't want to. I used to think that, if I sit in meditation for long enough and get myself totally sorted, then I can date and it'll all go fine. We have to take the show on the road. We have to give it a go. I absolutely advocate doing that with support, in company, not on your own, having people to check in with. But we have to take the show on the road, because our hurt happens in relationship and our healing happens in relationship too. Yeah, strong sense of loyalty, forget my own needs, belief that come rain or shine, so become a doormat. Yeah. So we want to look at the core problem there, the self-love, the lovability, the self-worth. A question on recommendations for books on emotional healing for Christian women. I can think about that. And I have your email, Emma. I don't have any that come to mind right now. I also do have my book, of course, which has lots of, yeah, I mean, it goes deep. It talks about spirituality. It talks about, yeah, finding connection. So, but I can think about your question. I'm just going to return to the slides and start wrapping up. As you're thinking of questions, please pop them in the chat. We'll have some Q&A with the recording on, and then I'll switch the recording off. So this is from current slide. Getting support with your blind spots, or getting support with the things that you've shared about in the chat, with your fears, with your self-worth, with your self-esteem. So when we have support, we are able to follow our intuition rather than ignore it. So I have these the other way around. So I'll just read them as they're written. So without support, without healing, we ignore our intuition rather than follow it. And I've done that. We also date with a craving rather than dating feeling grounded and full. So I use this phrase: dating with a craving is like going supermarket shopping when we are starving. We just grab everything in our basket, into the basket, like chocolate, sweets, crisps, everything. That's dating with a craving. So through healing, we stop dating with a craving, and we start dating feeling more full, feeling more grounded. We might be blind to our patterns, and we might need support to be aware of our patterns. We might be unaware of our fears, and we might want to become more mindful of our fears. And we might feel isolated and alone, whereas we could feel supported and connected. So I'm gonna leave that for a moment. I'm gonna tell you in a moment about ways that I can support you, but I want to do some questions first, and then I'll talk you through some ways in which I can support you. So does anyone have any other questions? We're going to answer these on the recording, and while you're thinking of them, I am going to recap what we've talked about. We've talked about 4 relationships. We've talked about your relationship with yourself, and that encompasses self-worth, self-connection, connection to your feelings, feeling your feelings, avoiding those numbing behaviors, self-esteem. Self-esteem comes from doing esteemable things. So when you esteem yourself through your actions, by taking care of yourself, you have greater self-esteem. Connection to your intuition, so that you can, that little tap on the shoulder. Okay, this isn't right. This situation isn't right. That person shouldn't be speaking to me like that. I don't feel valued. I don't feel loved. My intuition's telling me something. So if we are craving love, we'll just carry on. We'll just carry on. If we're not connected to our intuition, if we don't make time and space for it, we will just carry on right through those red flags. But if we're connected to our intuition, we will listen. And if we have people around us who can affirm our intuition and support us to trust ourselves, then that's really powerful. So relationship with self, I could go on about that, about all the different aspects of that. And that includes self-knowledge and self-awareness. It includes understanding your templates that you acquired in your early life or in later relationships, and how they set you up to conduct your relationships in a way that isn't good for you. So relationship with self, relationship with your life, passionate, purposeful. You don't have to like start a new career. You can just be doing stuff that lights your fire on the weekends, that brings you joy. If you love to dance, go dancing. If you love to sing, go singing. Have you got light in your life and joy in your life? Because otherwise we're going to look to the other person to provide that for us. And we are going to place all our hopes and dreams on the other person. And that's too much pressure for the relationship. It also means we will ignore our intuition, ignore our choices, ignore what's right for us, because we need them to fix us. So your relationship with your life, your relationship with others. Look out for codependency. So codependency, and I have a workshop on this, codependency is when we have a poor sense of self. We don't have a healthy self-esteem. We people please, we subordinate, we're a doormat, we're a chameleon, we're a pretzel. So look out for signs of codependency in your relationships, because that doesn't lead to healthy relationships. You want to heal that. You want to get help with that. You want to value yourself. And we've talked about your romantic relationships and some of the subconscious fears and anxieties, the template that you picked up in early life, the responses, the fight and the flight and the freeze and the fawn, and how they show up in your romantic relationships. And the solution to that, which is to engage with yourself, with your feelings, with dating, with healing, with the other person. And, I say this, a lot when in terms of how to find an emotionally available partner. And there's a lot about this in that course. We are looking for a capacity for intimacy in another person. We are looking for that in ourselves first. Do I have a capacity for intimacy? Have I done enough healing? Am I just going to push people away and be terrified as soon as they come near me? Have I developed a voice? Can I speak my truth? Can I negotiate? Can I do conflict? Have I got a capacity for intimacy? And then you're going to look on the dating websites and out there in real life for people with capacity for intimacy. They don't need to be perfect. They might even show some signs of unavailability. So I do say, when I'm talking about my relationship, when I first met my husband, we were both pretty emotionally unavailable. I was doing a lot of work on myself. Actually, he wasn't, but he had some signs. He had like he was averse to commitment, and I saw the signs of his aversion to commitment. But what he did have was a capacity for intimacy. So we could engage, we could converse, we could work through our issues, we could work through our challenges, we could go apart and come back together. And so he had a capacity for intimacy. So that's what you're looking for. So there's a question on how to expand your social circles. Great question. I did give a little challenge. I have, in a part of my group dating program, which I can tell you about in a moment. I gave them a challenge, and I'll give you the same challenge, which is to date while not dating online. Now, I'm not saying stop dating online, because obviously it's how many people find love these days. But how can you date without dating online? And that is about expanding your social circles. That is about doing the stuff that you love, doing it more often, taking a risk, doing things differently. So there's lots of things you can do. I'll start, with the basics of like opening your eyes. So I know this sounds like a tiny thing, but when I mention it on my courses and in my groups and people start doing it, it makes a difference. So we go around through our lives with our eyes open. We take our eyes off our screens. We engage with people in shops, on the bus, on the tube. We chat. We're open. We're open to conversation, and you might be doing that already, but I'm pretty sure that many of us like go through life, on the phone, looking at the screen. You might want to think about what truly lights your fire, brings you joy. For me, it's outdoor stuff. It's dancing, it's outdoor stuff. So when I was single, I joined a hiking group. I'm now in a choir. You might want to do something a little different to what you normally do. Try stuff like I did some life drawing. I did a painting class. You might be bold and brave to tell your friends that you're looking to meet people and see what they suggest. You might have tried all this already, and I totally appreciate that. Meetup groups, etc. But the key is to do these things in a different condition to how you've done them before. So you want to show up differently. You want to do them differently. So you might say, I've done meetups for the last 5 years. I would challenge you to do them in a different condition. And by that, I mean, you might need a bit more healing. You might need a bit more development. You might need to process a bit more of your fears and your pains, and then try them again. And then try them again. Because I'm sorry to say that the whole of the problem isn't out there. And I'm not saying that we're a problem, but some of the healing, some of the development, some of the growth needs to happen in here. And I know you know this. I know you know this. While you're thinking of any more questions, I'm just going to, in the last few minutes, I'm going to just let you know about ways in which I can support you. So if I just share my screen, and after that, I'll switch the recording off. You can ask any other questions. So the way I work is, the importance, I think, of having support. This is vital. So I work both one-to-one as a coach, and I create groups of women who are on a journey to love. And they have been very successful, and they are wonderful spaces. And I have a group program with the doors opening again in a couple of weeks on the 20th of January. So I can send you information about that. It does require an investment, and it is for those of you who are really ready to invest. I have other options. I have How to Find Emotionally Available Partner. That's a course. I have 14 Days of Love. That's a course on self-love. I have my foundations course that you can take in your own time, at your own pace, without the group, obviously for a lower investment. But I would encourage you, if you feel like you're dating alone, if you feel like you're not supported, and it doesn't have to be through me, obviously, and it doesn't have to be through my groups, you can find someone who's doing the same thing. Find a buddy, find someone to support you. But I just wanted to share the impact of working with me or working with my groups. So very quickly, you opened my mind to what has actually been going on in my relationships my whole life. So while I may not be the cheapest coach, I believe I might work the fastest, as in I know the patterns, I see them quickly, and I can help you to transform. And this is what I really value in the work that I offer. And it doesn't happen overnight, but I believe that because of the work I have been doing over all these years on myself and with others, I can see through things and I can support you to see them too. I feel like a different person and I'm not exaggerating. And the group work and the one-to-one work is all about facing your fears. So these two women married last year. They had done work with me. So not running away in fear from the relationship. And dating with support. So Fiona says that it was like running a race with a coach who'd shown me how to run effectively, and all these people on the sidelines cheering me on. And I just had a testimonial from Kim on my current group coaching program, who has said that it has been life-changing for her and she wouldn't be where she is without it. And where she is right now is she came to me single, and she is now in the early stages of a relationship that feels completely different to what she has been in before. Yeah, so I believe that working with me saves time, money, energy, and heartache. Hugely transformational, amazing value for money, profound, got to the bottom of stuff that I've never been able to understand before. And you pointed out things to me that I hadn't figured out in years of therapy. So this is the value I think that I offer. So if you'd like to join the group coaching program, book a free discovery call if you haven't already. If you'd like one-to-one coaching or like to explore that, book a free discovery call. I'll put the link in the chat and in the follow-up email. I'll also put links to the courses. I'll put them in the last few minutes. And this is me on my wedding day, which was a joyous occasion. So questions. Yeah, let me just see if there's any in the chat. And then I'll switch off the recording. Thank you so much for that lovely comment. I'm just going to put a few links in the chat, and I'm also going to switch off the recording. If you're watching on recording, you will receive the links along with the recording if you'd like to explore working with me further. But I'll just sign off this recording bit by saying transformation is absolutely possible. It is absolutely possible. It does require some investment. It requires some healing. It requires support, in my opinion, for many of us, but it is possible. So thank you for watching. Stay with me if you're here live.